think is of community interest and or of concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line, address it to the Let's Talk program in K.O. Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis. So give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. And by the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, thought that get results. With regards to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or a comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized, and when you're getting on the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we'll not accept anything we deem not within our broadcast standards. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, thought that get results. You can also follow us on our YouTube channel at Vaughan Radio, and you click subscribe, our Facebook page at Vaughan Radio. Tonight, Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to my fellow panelists, and good evening to the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly the graceful people of Nevis, those who listen to us on the World Wide Web through YouTube, Facebook, and at the same time, worldwide. Webbo, I'm here this evening, and I'm hoping we would have a great show. Last week, a wedge issue. As a result, I will comment later. Thank you. Webbo.
Conrad Nair Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to my colleague, Mr. Stanley, around the table, and to everyone in tune to this program. Webbo, we're at the end of a beautiful day here on Ireland, and it is with great pleasure that I say thank you for having me once again, Webbo. Yes, everyone will agree that we have entered the political climate and season, and of course there's a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss, and I'm looking forward to a good discussion tonight, Webbo. Yes.
Yes, so what we got?
Webbo, last week you had Wedge on, and I made sure I didn't touch the political aspect of the behemoth effort which they made back then with regard to bringing Nevis forward and demonstrating against the federal government in the true sense of the word. And in that regard, I hope that people listened, they understood the history, and ultimately learned from that history. Of course, I am not sure if Wedge is still on the same opinion regarding the furtherance of Nevis's agenda, specifically secession. I am not in accordance with the move of secession, but at the same time, it was very instructive and informative based on what Wedge brought to the fore. And I commend him very highly, simply because of his participation, and at the same time, the courage that he took in the presence of army, weaponry, and ultimately the confrontation with regard to the pickup truck and the like. However, Wedge has made a major contribution and continues to make a major contribution to this island that we all love. Wedge, if you're listening, congratulations to your contributions, and continue to make your contributions Webbo.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Edric, because I wanted to give you, a little time to put your input in that, and because you were not in-house at the time, you did call and make a contribution, which, was good, but then, I like to get an extended view from you, because the world knows that you're one of my super heavyweights analyst in chief, and along with Ted. By the way, Ted, wherever you are, we want to send a big shout out to you. And there's a long time saying, Edric, you would know it, the younger people say it a different way, but you never miss the water until the well run dry, you know that?
Right, quite so.
So maybe I might have to now train Naya, because I had Ted first I used to go to when I need help and say, how am I doing? And then if Ted is not there, say, well, let's try Edric. So the two of you were absent last week, so I was at the mercy of the sea. Nobody to rescue me, to say, well, how am I doing? So how is it for some balance? So I just wanted to, like I said, give you an opportunity to expound on that, because we had some very, very big and rave reviews with that interview with Wedge, and a lot of folks asking us to do more folks who have made solid contributions to the society, such as him. And we try to do what the people ask us to do. So I just wanted to point that out to you. Now, I guess now you had something else, you wanted to say something?
Not in particular.
Okay. I have something else that I want to go to. I don't know. Let's see here. I think I have it here. Number 3. Okay. So I wanted to play this little tribute. We lost one of our cricketing greats, Rafael Wallace, Rafi, and our sports analyst in chief, Frankie Claxton, who is now away in Angola, sent us a very brief little contribution, which I suppose stands not on behalf of himself, but also all of us here at Vaughan Radio. But just like to mention just one little thing about Rafi. And when you hear Frankie's comment, all that Frankie says is true, and a lot more. Outside of even the cricket, he made solid contributions to the society as well. He likes to debate. I don't know how successful he was at it, but he likes to debate, and he had a real good heart. And from it's a personal loss for me as well, because we are very, very good friends. The truth is that when I was finished with high school, I used to, first I used to play in the club, the cricket champion, the cricket league for the CSS. And then once you left school, you had to go and join a club. And then there were 2 main clubs in Charlestown. There was a Government Road, which Rafi lived in Government Road, and I lived in Upper Government Road, and I lived in Lower Government Road. But somehow it seems to me that it wasn't designed that way, but I always seemed to be different, because I did not end up playing for Government Road. And Rafi and I played for the Rivals cricket team. So we started out there together. And then later on he went over to the All-Stars cricket team. Now, there is a story behind why he went over there, but I won't say it now. And if I were to say it, they wouldn't want me to say it. But and then
we want to hear it.
Well, I don't have the time now, because you know me, I ain't afraid. I would say it, But he had a particular name for me as well, that I know the fellows in the particular area, Government Road area, they used to call me by that name. And then there were only two persons left who would continue to call me by that name. So I would know. It was Johnny, and remember Johnny? And he passed away a couple of years ago. And then the only person left who would call me that name. So whenever I hear that, I know it's Rafi. But, such as it is. So, good fellow.
And what's that name?
Well, I don't have the time for that right now either. So, when we get some time. So, let's go to Frankie.
This is Frankie Claxton. I am calling on a sad note, but I have to share some memories about my friend. Rafael Wallace, friend, opening bowling partner for the Government Road All-Stars cricket team in the 70s. One who was always there for me. I remember one day while fixing the fence of our animal paddock, he came and assisted me without even asking. And he was always willing to share information about animals, which we spoke about during that particular time, especially cattle, because we both raised our family animals. We both cheered the new ball for the Government Road All-Stars cricket team. He was a fitness fanatic, a lover, and very passionate about his game. I remember him with his battles between himself and Luther Kelly of St. Kitts and Austin Collard, Jalla Brown of Brownhill in tight cricket matches. He was a fearsome foe. During cup matches, he would say to me, "You keep your end tight. I can start take the early wickets. Alan Elko will finish them." He was a hard fighter, a motivator, a team player, just loved the sports. He also ran as an athlete for the club when we formed the club, playing in all kinds of sports, and also played football for the football team. My friendship with him was strong. Lots of arguments, lots of fun, and I do recall one afternoon during a primary school football match, we had an argument over some cricketing matter. And the next day we met, these matches were played at the park at the time. We shook hands and spoke and joked around. And one of my students who was present at that time the day before came up and said to me, "Coach, you and he agree?" Rafi did not allow me to respond. He immediately responded to the boy. He said, "Little boy, look, Frankie Claxton and me go way back. And not because he lives in Gingerland now. We were always good friends and still remain good friends. We argue and we don't get mad. We are very passionate about exchanging our views. No vexation. So, that's the way I want you to live. You see how we live? That's the way I want you to live. We live as good friends. And I would want you to do the same with your friends and all other students." Rafi was there for me when I got married. Helped me to butcher the goats and picked and chopped out my jellies for me. So it goes to show the extension of how we work with each other. All through our lives we kept a good relationship, cricket or otherwise. He was a good man, always meant well, very humorous, and was willing to share a laugh or some idea. He was a community man. Rafi Wallace, to you, from me and my family, to your wife and the rest of your family, your siblings and friends, and the cricketing fraternity within Nevis and beyond, may your soul rest in peace. Rafael Wallace, another good man gone. I am Frankie Claxton, reporting out of Rainbow City, Angola.
You know Frankie Edric?
Oh, yes.
You think there'll be another Frankie?
No,
He's as unique as you get, right?
quite so. Quite so.
Yeah, he's my childhood friend. So all of us, grew up together and so on. And the story that he told about telling the little fellow, and things, I suppose, change a bit. So what you got to add to that, Edric?
I am saying it was very instructive to have heard Frankie with that line, and of course it is so foreign to the youths of today. Some of the youths, most of the youths, they are engaged in not so good behavior. As a result, Rafi's comment or admonition or advice to the youngster was apropos. Sure enough, I'm not sure if the youngster took it on, imparted it to his friends, treated his friends as he was advised to do. But at the same time, when we look at the violence of today, it is quite a distant thing of the past. I mean, the behavior of the youth today is front and center. The admonition that Rafi gave to the youth is a distant past.
You know, Edric, I want to, cut in here and you and say, I almost weary of hearing that phrase that, the behavior of the youths today and so on. So who you hear what Frankie said Rafi did? He didn't let him answer. Right. So you think that we need to stop grumbling and do something?
Listen, we all play a certain part with the youths. I mean, I don't want...
So then the evidence is we're not playing our part well then?
No.
Okay, so maybe when we say anything, we must admonish ourselves as well, instead of just keep admonishing them, right?
Well, it is a two-way street.
Right, but we were just talking we just keep talking one way, right? You agree with that?
Quite so.
Okay.
Quite so. I don't really want to bring to the fore, but at the same time, I think I should mention it. One of the young fellows who got killed recently, I spent some time, almost 2-3 hours, 2 hours maybe, at the grandparents' house, because I saw so much in this young man, so much potential, and as a result, I felt obligated to spend some time to help him along, guide him along, and I was terribly distraught when I heard that he got shot. And I said to myself, it is hard for me to digest, but at the same time, it's real. And I was hoping, Master, can't you bring back that fellow? At the same time, we know how life is. And he was eulogized by Carlyle Powell. And there were so many positive things that Carlyle said based on that eulogy, that this fellow was geared for stardom. But for whatever reason.
Now you got a comment in reference to Rafi?
Yes, Webbo, I'm so happy that we could have spent this moment talking about Rafi. I know Rafi very well. I'm from down the hill, Rafi from up the hill, and we used to play a lot of cricket with Rafi. Never met a guy so passionate about the game, so serious about the game, so hard working about the game. I'm happy we're talking about Rafi and cricket, because Nevis had cricket as one of the things that make us feel good in the 1970s and late 1970s, well, all through the 70s and early 80s, and Rafi was a part of it. Rafi was a player for the government road cricket team, which was a powerhouse in the game of cricket, and Nevis was also a powerhouse in Leeward Islands cricket, and that seriously made Nivijans proud in a big way. So Rafi's love for cricket to me reflect his love also for Nevis, and so it was for all those cricketers back in those days. I played with Rafi, and I was opening batsman, and we practiced in the park. But Rafi bowling me bouncers like we are not on the same team. And I had to ask him, well, why you want to knock me down? And, you know, we're on the same team, you know. But that's how he was. He will scare you, and he will give you the full experience. But Rafi was hard-working person, a good person. And I could remember one day I'm coming up on the boat, and he was talking about himself a little bit. And he said, I not only represent Nevis in cricket, I represent Nevis in athletic. And I didn't know about that, and further it was confirmed to me that yes, he was an athlete of some sort, but ardent sportsman, should be remembered, yes, in the avenues of Nevis cricket, a fast bowler. I think I could remember the very first time Rafi played for Nevis. I think so, and the very first ball he bowled. You know, the batsman played it out to cover, and he was so heightened with what he was on about. He reached out there to cover to get the ball before the cover fielder. And I could remember Elcomedo tend to just, you know, tell him cool, because he was so hyped up. He was that type of spirit, you know. Besides when I hear he had a stroke and he was sick and all that, and as I said, I'm so happy that we could have spend this moment and pay some tribute to him, because he's a Nivision to the bone, and he represents us at a time when we needed the representation. And you know, may soul rest in peace. And it's these kind of individuals we sometimes can't forget, because the politician doesn't do it. You know, he's our sportsman, it's our artists, our musicians. These are who make the little island popular and renowned. And so when such personalities like Rafael passed, of course we must pay tribute to him to the fullness, because when he was here, Nevis was at the heights of his game. Nevis was the strongest team in the Leeward Islands. Nevis is to beat St. every match, and that meant something to Nivision. So I tip my hat to you, Rafi. I remember playing with you. You had so much chat, man. Such a lively personality, you know, and yet such a strict personality too on the field. I remember him, and he would be always remembered really in the avenues of government road cricket, Nevis cricket, fast bowling in Nevis.
Edric wanted me to say something, so I'll say something, but not what he wanted me to say. You know, Edric, after I left and I went to in the Virgin Islands, right? I used to play down there. I used to play in Tortola and St. Thomas and so on. So the Nevis team used to come down, you know, and play matches and so on. So I remember one late evening, a late afternoon, the Nevis team had batted first, and then we had about 30 minutes batting, and that's when what Rafi likes. He got about 30 minutes to the end of the day. And so a fella and I opened the batting, and Rafi is bowling real fast, a lot of short pitch bouncers. And every time he bowled, this guy a bouncer hit him either in his chest or someplace and hit him, and you know, it's a real thing. And then when I went down to the other end, remember I told you he and I started out together, so I know him a bit and he knows me. So every time he bounced, I hook him. And then the play finished, and then we went for dinner. And as Naya said, he has a lot of chat. So he's there talking, and he's telling them, fellas, you know, and then he said, the only fella I ain't gonna bounce to is my partner Webbo here. Of course he wouldn't bounce to him because I hook him. But like I said, good good fellow, good spirited, and so on and so forth. So, Edric, you got something,
Well,
right? You're not going to tell me you used to face him, too?
No, I didn't really know him because I left here in '66, but I kept abreast as to what was happening, and sure enough, as Frankie mentioned, he played for the played Leeward at the Leeward level for Nevis, and that tells me that he in fact was a rounded sportsman.
Okay, well let me bring this person in who perhaps want to make a comment. Hello, thank you for holding. Go ahead. Hello, good evening. You're on the air.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
This is Jan Grover calling.
Yes.
And I'm calling on behalf of the netball fraternity because Rafael was not only a cricketer, he used to play netball with us also. He used to practice netball with the Government Road All-Stars netball team. And he used to come down whenever we had a team going away. He would always come down and practice with the team and give the girls all sorts of advice and encouragement about the game, playing the game, and, encouraging us all. So I just want to say, send condolences to his family and thank them for having Rafi work with us over the years. Rafi, the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. You have a good evening. Okay. So if you like to call and mention something, we probably can take it now. We don't have a lot of minutes, but I'm going to take a break and come right back. This is Talk That Get Results. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. So we'll be back after these.
Builder's Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builder's Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builder's Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builder's Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
You're listening to Vaughn Radio from the Federation of St. Kitts Nevis.
In essence, the question that we just replayed, when you came to the fore, people speculated, and I said the question that everybody keeps asking, and they asked me to ask you, will you last? The answer was,
well, if the answer was no, that's fine. The answer is no, but at last the broader ideas are being put forward, and as far as I'm concerned, that is a win-win.
So once somebody puts forth the ideas that you wanted, there's no need for you.
No, there's absolutely no need for me in this juncture.
Okay.
As far as that is concerned.
Okay.
Right
I got you. So I thank you for that. So that you were bold enough to come and launch 2 years ago. You're bold enough to come back and say, well, it didn't last.
Well,
right?
You're conceding that it didn't last, or you're on pause?
Well, he used the word didn't last, but I like the word. Give me a second. I like the term that we have stepped back and let the process move forward.
Well, that's what I use.
What I'm saying.
But that's what I use because I have no dog in this race, so to speak. So that is why I played the clips.
Right.
I don't want to use my words. So the words are, you have stepped back.
Yes. So from now on, going forward, I'm sure you would say there are 3 parties in the race.
Oh, okay. So I must say there are 3 parties in the race, and the PDA has stepped back.
Correct.
And that will be correct to say.
I like the language.
There are 3 parties in the race. The PDA has stepped back.
Yes, and is not a competitor in this election at all.
I got it. License to say it. There was 4. Now there is 3. Edric.
It is quite instructive and fascinating to have listened to that. broadcast. And I am somewhat taken aback simply because they came out with such firepower at the time when they were here, when you interviewed them. And I said, they do have a contribution to make. At the same time, I didn't think that they had that heavy firepower to in fact do any damage to the ruling party or those who are at the seat of government currently. Now, everybody sees that pyramid. The premier sits or stands at the top of that pyramid, and below him are his men, his cabinet, and below him they've got, I think, well, they got 52% in the last election, thereabout, and they've got the people behind them. So when the party, in fact, saw that kind of challenge, they had no choice but to step back, simply because begin nothing before you first considering what the end will be. And if you're going to enter a race and you don't see the possibility of winning, then you know exactly what the outcome would be. For me, as I participated, I had a different outlook. My thing was to defend, I repeat, defend the little entity that I had at church ground. As a result, I entered the race, and I can put in the winning column that I, in fact, did what I expected to do by ensuring that those people who, in fact, were trying to stick the knife in my back and turn it, they were able to understand. So,
good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Bernard Brown. I'm calling on behalf of myself and my family to share deepest sympathy to Rafael Hugh Wallace. As a former captain of school side, he was my main opening bowler along with Spencer May from Overbat, then Manjaka and Wisp. And as we played for All Stars in government, well, I was the opener and wicket keeper. So he can be sadly missing. And it's a pity that the cricket we used to play in those days is not followed by the youngsters that is around right now. So again, I say, on behalf of myself and my family, I share my deepest sympathy to him, his wife, and brothers and sisters.
All right, thanks much. Okay. Naya?
Webbo,
yes.
The gentleman said he have stepped back. He seems to have said in an indirect way that someone else would be representing his cause.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know which one. Or there's three more party. There's the Moral Restoration, and of course there is the NRP.
Well, I think further on in the conversation, of course we didn't play the whole thing, but I think he did indicate which one is carrying his cause. Yeah, but didn't he, Edric? Didn't he say that there was some other entity that was? I think he said he had some discussions with one of the entities, which was, it was not MRM, because MRM was not in the mix at that time.
Yeah.
And once he became persuaded that they can and will continue carry the fight, I think he did. And you see, I'm a little guarded, because you notice when I play the clip, he chastised me in using my own words to make my own conclusion. I thought that he did not. What was I saying? That it didn't last, and he told me not to say that. So he told me, going forward, I must say he stepped back.
Okay.
So I'm an obedient person. I say he stepped back. So I'm very cautious as to with that part. I'm sorry that I don't have the ability to pull up exactly what he said then. But if necessary, I would do it. But go ahead.
It kind of reminds me of what Trump said about the Proud Boys when he asked them to stand by. In a sense that step back seems like he may come forward another time if the work is not carried out properly. That step back doesn't seem like he have quit. And
okay, I got you. So in essence, you're saying there's a technique, or there is, how should I call it? A strategy in saying he stepped back rather than. So he is very
yes. Gives one the inclination that he might come back another time, you know.
But Edric had said, when he used to be on the program with us, Edric had labeled him as a guy who moves in a tactical way. Yeah, so maybe that's it. So they have stepped back, and you're suggesting that you get the feeling that they might well come back forward.
Well, if you step back, you also can step back from stepping back, and that means you might find yourself apart, because you see sometimes things look nice and glittering, but and it looks like it would take you somewhere to walk on the edge of it, but when it comes to when you comes to the crossroad, when you comes to really committing yourself, where your everything is going to be on the line, your integrity and everything, as you sometimes run away. Sometimes it's the initial exposure some people are looking, and sometimes they tangle some feet in that process too. But I'm not very surprised that they have decided not to participate, because going forward, when they made the declaration, there wasn't very public at all in their what could I say, advocation. This seems to went on the ground. I'm not surprised. Some of us felt it wasn't going to go through. Somehow, Webbo, I must say that I'm more convinced that the MRM will go through, and one or other candidates in the MRM, to me, she's no real showcase. I think she have a job to do, which she's committed to, and she'll run the race. But in the personalities that represented the PDA, I did have some doubts, because Webbo, it's a work in progress. If you cannot see yourself not winning and staying the course, then you're wasting time, basically. Because who win the first time around? There's some who do, but most don't. And so that's the fence, that's the hurdle new politicians will have to be dealing with, on a political stage like we have here on Ireland.
Well, I would say that when you start eyeing for those kinds of positions, whether premiership or to win your seat in the particular district, you have to have name recognition, you have to have money, you have to have a certain following, certain base from which you're going to launch. And if for some reason you don't have that base in terms of people, if you don't have the title, meaning an outstanding teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, or a hard-working person who is seen and known in the community, the people that form your base, would be the launching pad for you to determine whether or not you're going to be successful or you'd be a failure. And in Nevis, it's not easy to participate politically simply because it is a very demanding, challenging, and ultimately a task that is not lightly taken. And those who in fact decided to get their hat in the ring or to participate, they've got to have a war chest. A war chest meaning a certain amount of firepower, meaning money. And again, if you don't have the title, the exposure at the community level, you don't have what is required in terms of popularism, you don't stand a chance. You don't stand a chance. And therefore, I would say to anybody who's vying for political office, begin to analyze yourself first, and then begin to make your rounds. I didn't do that simply because I had to get into the race again to defend my business at church ground. Alright? So I started late, but I was very effective because I came out with all I got. Anyway, history would, I think, should treat me kindly based on my participation in that race. Now you participated in the same race too, I think, at the same time. And, well, you didn't do so well. I didn't do as well as I thought I would do. But at the same time, I got 39 votes and people told me, my friend, you got a lot of votes, far more than anybody anticipated. Anyway, I was a different type of candidate. Faced the hurdle, faced the guillotine, and as a result, by the time the people realized that damage is going to be done, they came, but they came too late to ask me to pull back. And no retreat, no surrender when it comes to Edric Stanley.
So you were asked to step back?
Oh yes.
Okay, so this step back thing is not new. It's a part of the process.
Part of the process.
That is used or that can be used.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got you knew that? You knew that
no,
part?
I wasn't aware of that day.
You learn a lot of things as you go along. So Glendale was not pulling anything out of the air. It is something that's part of a process that you can use.
Well, it is apropos.
Oh, okay, all right.
It's apropos.
Okay, now you wanted to say something? Edric seemed to be talking about your history for you. He's talking about his and talking about yours.
Yes, Webbo. I wanted to say, Webbo, success in an election, it's almost, what could I say? You can win the votes and you'll be very happy. You can lose the votes, but yet feel a sense of achievement and success. With that spirit, you will go on to the other election. If you adapt that feeling of failure, you won't go nowhere. I ran in an election and independent candidate, and we felt we done very well. We were so happy.
Where did you run? St. John's or Charlestown?
St. John's.
And you ran with Edric? At the same time? I'm not so sure about that,
Sure I don't know if we were powerful.
Now you did not run in that.
I didn't see Edric
but he lived on the other side of St. John because... Oh, no.
Listen to me.
You live in St. John.
Listen. Naya ran in 97, right? You ran in 1992.
92.
Yes.
I don't remember everything that
No, I'm telling you what the facts are.
Well, no, I participated in 2 elections.
You, one was a federal.
The first was the federal.
No. The first was the local. You ran for the St. John's People's Party, captained by Edric W. Stanley. In 1992,
Good.
You got 39 votes,
yes,
and you ran against Sim Daniel and Malcolm Gishad, and Sim Daniel lost by, I think, 30-something votes or something to that effect, or 8 votes, very narrow margin, and that is what caused the NRP to lose, and CCM got in power in 1992. Right?
Quite true. You got the history.
I got the history. And then in 1997 or maybe even 2001, that's when Naya ran.
No, it's 97.
Okay, 1997,
yeah, for sure.
with his campaign manager as Rasdella.
That was 1997.
Yes, I interviewed him here.
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of parties that launch right here. I mean, if you don't launch here in that launch, this is what I'm saying. And then, Edric, you ran the federal election,
right?
And with the NRP.
That is correct.
And you told me here, and I have the evidence and the tape, that you had to swim ashore.
Well, that is correct too. That is correct. But you see,
when you see me here and I ain't saying nothing, I'm listening.
Yeah, well, that is of course a good student who has the aptitude to listen well and remember, and then you can expound upon it years later, and that's what you're doing, and you got the information correctly.
Yes.
But I was joined into the race 10 years earlier.
Okay, so then how am I doing? Because I told persons that in one aspect I'm trying to be like you in terms of gathering information on my desk. And I have so much information on my desk nowadays, I almost wondering if I can compete with you.
Well, you have already surpassed me.
Oh, there you go. Let me take this. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good
evening, you're on the air.
Good evening. Naya didn't expect to win because I remember Naya coming to Brownhill and a certain area in Prospect. There are some children in the area telling Naya, Naya, no, I won't go for nothing. Nobody can vote for you. Hear Naya's response. Also, I vote, I live in my city.
Campaign is
Mosquito City.
That is what sometimes is funny about this politics thing. And well, I know that a lot of people made the downfall by saying certain things, but it's part of the history. And once you say certain things about a group of people, they will never forget. Even when you forget, they won't forget.
That is quite hilarious in terms of
That doesn't sound like me.
Doesn't sound like me.
No, it doesn't sound like me. I don't remember, but what can I say? It's okay.
But they attributed to you.
Wow.
And maybe it might have been a political play, because sometimes, to be fair, people make up things and attribute them to somebody else or candidates or parties and so on. So all that is part of the play. That is why with most things we try to have the hard evidence.
Yes, well, at the same time, it was quite a challenge. Politics is intoxicating, As a result, there are lots of people who would like to get into the race get somewhat knighted or beckoned to from a respected party, an organized group of people, and as a result they are looking to get into the race. A fellow told me, oh, he wants to run for CCM. And I tell him, well, what's your fame to the game? He doesn't have any fame to the game. At the same time, he feels that he can run and he can win. Of course, he is a known quantity. At the same time, he doesn't measure up to those people who are at the helm currently, and the NRP has people there with a certain amount of firepower. I do not know if it would be used well, but at the same time, I don't think that they're going to be successful at this juncture, this time around. At the same time, you can't prevent them or stop them from trying. But last session, when the Honorable Mark Brantley called in.
Edric, let me let you get back to that. Let me take this caller first. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good night, brother.
Yes.
Good night, Tyler. Good night, Mother.
Good night.
Brother, I experienced this, not experience, the same situation like when the young lady said about Maya. I remember that, but the situation was different to this candidate. Now, I don't remember all these feelings in number 3, but in, I think, it was the 90s. I remember it was the 80s. He was in number 3 against Joseph France, and when she was coming around, especially to him, all clear cut as the more man has young, more water, more water. And so he smiled them, talk up to them, laugh up to them, say, man, look at how the boy swing now, custom now, tell them not negative. Man, that's a bit, I want to back up, you know, and swing is nice, going on, because some to make it, and walk on it, and young guy, so. And he get about the and I believe that if he wins in the next election, I believe he will succeed. If he wins, I don't think he will win the next election. You see, most of the politicians who are going to politics, they don't have the courage and the faith. As soon as you lose an election, the party sector, you come out because you don't feel like you're going to win. But you got to put that strong encouragement. You got to know how to make people talk to the people and do what you got to do as a candidate in your constituency. Because it's the same people that you're going to control. It's the middle of represent. And I'm sure it's really going to see. He will represent them better. Because he was going to support forces. He was a person like Carl and nobody and think nobody. He was a correspondent, he was a teacher, and he was a sportsman, he was in everything. So I believe that all these things that come in the next election, I believe that we are either Irish sports, because number 2 every day you have people really, anybody to win.
Okay. Stanley, go ahead.
Well, the Honorable Mark Brantley came on and was able to set the record straight, and it spoke volumes based on what he disseminated. And as a result, I stayed and listened, and based on the math that the Honorable Premier brought to the fore, somewhere along the line, our partner here, our colleague here, just didn't get it in terms of putting the numbers to reach to 500 million. Mark Bradley said it costs $7 million a month. $7 million a month for pension and salaries. 712 are 84. 4 by 84. 4 8 are 32. 4 are 16. 320, 336. 336 million within 4 years. At the same time, there's a fifth year because 5 years you have for election term. So putting another 100 million on that, the math speaks volumes in terms of the quantification and multiplication of those numbers. 370 million was stated that he had received. They lowered it at some point in time, based on what we have heard, to 260 million. But when you look at it in terms of the numbers that the Premier brought to the fore, the numbers are up there with regarding to expenditure. And we see it. The money has been spent in many areas, as he has stated. And you can't deny it, because if you want to pretend you don't see it, you can pretend. But the expenditure was done. Roads, the police station, the Mondo track, you name it. Salaries.
We don't have a lot of minutes there, Edric.
Anyway,
so yes, so your point.
My thing is that it was easy math, but for convenience, or people here, well, I shouldn't say our people, or candidate here, didn't see the numbers, didn't do the math that was necessary to bring it up to 370 million. Webbo.
I thought it was a good exchange. It's always good to when allegations have been made, and we have a call in from the person who such allegations involved to a great extent. It was an unfinished symphony, even though there was an explanation by the Honorable Premier. It wasn't conclusive in a sense, and I'm talking about that particular exchange, because Dr. Bartlett did promise to call in on Wednesday, and I tuned in, and I believe there was an increase in ratings then, because a lot of people tune in to hear the exchange or the continuation of the exchange that started on Tuesday night. But obviously Dr. Bartley didn't call in. I thought that was a great opportunity that she missed. She may have had other reasons not to, which I suppose she may explain when she come by, but I thought that was an appropriate and an opportune time to get her message across. As I say, a lot of people tune in. So that discussion that we had Tuesday night, to me, it was an unfinished symphony to be finished the next evening with the Honorable Premier. But obviously, she didn't call in, and she had reasons why.
So you thought she was going to call?
I thought she was going to call.
Edric, you thought she was going to call?
Oh yes, and let me tell you,
yes.
I don't listen often to the night of the Premier's presentation, but I would listen the next day. At the same time, I listened that night when the Premier was on. I called in too, but I was listening primarily because she said she was going to call in.
And you believe that?
Oh, yes, I believe it.
And now you thought she was going to call?
Yes.
Okay, so Edric always think he knows me. You think that I thought she was going to call?
Well, I would say yes. I would say yes. Oh, well, maybe I got it wrong this time. But at the same time, okay, well, more on a deeper analysis, I think you felt that she wouldn't call simply because she's up against a Goliath in terms of having the information, and she didn't have anything.
Let me take this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hello?
Yes.
Well, this is Patricia.
Yes.
Bartlett. And I was hoping I would get an invite tonight, but obviously the other can. Look, ma'am, I never said that I was going to call. So let me clarify that for Stan. I said to you, let me tell the Premier, let me call him tomorrow night because he kept going on.
Okay.
It's filibuster. No, let me finish. He kept going on, and obviously it was a filibuster because he didn't want to answer. Stanley, you were impressed by the numbers. What numbers did the Premier present last night? Huh?
He presented.
He didn't call any number?
He presented $7 million a year for salaries and pension. And I felt it's simple math. $7 million a year for salaries and pension, multiplied by 12. I mean, $7 million a month, multiplied by 12. That's 84 million. 84 million multiplied by 5. 5 8s are 40.
The budget, Danny, there's a budget that you can find online that will tell you how much they spent. Okay? So don't let the Premier fool you. Alright? They sent what the Prime Minister has done as budgetary support. It wasn't you and all of us that he has been borrowing to pay salaries. So why do you think that he has been borrowing to pay salaries? Obviously, the federal government never said that they were paying all of the salaries. They said that they spent $250 million for that. That is separate and apart from the revenues that we collect from taxes, all the grants that we get. You need to just look budget. Okay, so I encourage you, before you start listening to just the flowery words that the Premier would put out. The Premier never accounted for $371 million when he called. Here, that was his strategy, and he won at the time. But obviously, I'm not going to call. I never said I was going to call him. I was trying to get him off this line. I said, let me call him on his show since he wanted to debate it. But obviously, I'm not going to call the Premier because he's so disrespectful when people call him on his show. I'm not going to subject myself to that. But we had a show last night. And on that show, I shared people because I did research. I shared with the people not only the $371 million that the federal government would have sent to Nevis, but all of the taxes that we have been paying, all of the revenues that they have collected and spent every dime, plus the loans. So don't forget that, because we are indebted to the tune of over $500 million, and only 12,000 of us live here. So Mr. Stanley, I encourage you to just go on, just Google, think it's Nevis budget address. And there's a Caribbean elections site there. And it's going to give you every budget address for the past, whatever, 10, 12 years. So I encourage you to do that. And don't be fooled by the Premier. You do right for that. Okay? Have a good night. Thank you, Webbo.
All right. You notice something? Yeah, go ahead, Mrs. Naya or Mr. Stanley, which one?
Listen, I listened and I understand. The Premier mentioned that nobody has been laid off, and at the same time, it doesn't mean that the $371 million that was sent over for budget support, as the case might be, has not been exhausted.
You know, this thing began last week when I said, I keep hearing about this 273. You remember that, Naya?
Yeah. Yes.
And I said, you know, I like to try to see whether or not we can get things settled. And everybody knows what I did or say in trying to see whether or not we can get it settled. But it continues to go on and on. I promise you, I'll make another attempt to see if we can get it settled, right? Because I'm listening to everybody. And just like when I made a proposal last week, thinking that I'll do something else again to see whether or not we can get it, settled somehow. Okay, Naya, go ahead.
Well, it's difficult to settle if we don't know how much money we're talking about. Because we've been hearing a vast variation in terms of the money, and that is problematic. But obviously this is going to be an election issue. It sounds like it's going to be ring out, and somebody like me, what can I say when I am not sure about how much money? Maybe I should be asking, is there more money supposed to be coming, or where's the rest? Are we in a position to ask for the rest that was promised? Maybe I should be asking that, because I am not sure of the amounts, and it's become an issue now where the real truth is going to be slightly distorted from various angles. But as an division, are we getting our fair share?
Naya, let me get in here. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Webber and your panelists. Now, it is easy to know about the debt, If you pick up a copy of the government estimates, because they need it only separate, they're actually online, and you go to the back of the book, it gives a detail of all of the debts, the interest rate, the pay period, so that you can work it out. So you will see what year the debt was incurred. Some of them have grace period, because sometimes people don't know that. You could get a debt and you might have a 25-year grace period or 10-year, and it becomes payable when the government might have changed. And to work out what was the debt at the beginning of the 2013 and what was it now? Was any debt carried forward? You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think though...
It can be done. A lot of things we asked are in the books, And
I think this particular issue that we were discussing last week, though, seemed to be something slightly different than just the debt. I think what seemed to be the issue...
Talking about the capital expenditure.
Right. That
again is in the book.
And so on. So I think it is, yeah.
You have the capital expenditure. I used to work on those stuff, You have the capital expenditure. And I think sometimes people get confused. Okay. There will be a total...
Caller,
figure,
why don't you just take a half a minute and finish up?
There's
because
a total figure which would be in, and then you have the year by year what is drawn down. So if you see a figure, don't mean all is spent in that year. So I would encourage people, go to the IMF report, scroll down to the bottom. They have tables with relevant information. That would answer a lot of the questions that people are asking. All right then.
Okay, thank you very much. That's going to be the last word. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On Demand. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Talk that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely Broadcasting Company Limited, or its